Hello guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about the second method, drawing ellipse, axis end. Remember, this is nothing similar to the way that we're drawing ellipse on a paper. Nothing at all. So because I've seen some student, they say, sir, you told us this is how we're drawing ellipse in AutoCAD. Since in the previous years, before pandemic, we were doing hand drawing. So in the hand drawing, I encounter many students, they were trying to implement the same methods that I taught them in AutoCAD for the hand drawing, but that does not work there. To draw ellipse, we're using 4 centers. We're going to show it to you if the department allows us to do it, at least some practice on campus. So the second method for drawing ellipse is written axis end. Now pay attention to the shape. Sometimes those icons are telling you which information you need. Look at the shape of this center. It provides center. Even the highlighted pictures here. When you just hover the mouse over the icon, leave it for a few seconds, you'll have this one. It says 1, 2, 3. You can see those green one means the center, 1 point there, 1 point on the other axis. We have the second method, which is axis end. For axis end, we need 3 points. The name of the command is axis ends. End of axis will be used to draw the ellipse. So it means that we have to use a combination of those 4 points. I don't need center. I can use combination of 4 points. Sometimes even we can use the distance between them, the distance as well. Let's talk about them step by step to see which information we have to provide for this method. Now, a combination between 3 points here, any combination you will end up, it will be okay to draw the ellipse. Why? Because if you choose 3 points out of the 4 points, 2 of them will be on one axis, 1 of them will be on the other axis. Let me just give you a hint. I can choose point 1, 2, 3. Yes, like I say, point 1, point 2, point 3. That's enough. 2 points on the main axis, 1 point on the secondary axis. Instead of point 3, I can still say point 1, point 2, with point 4, I can still draw it. Why? The idea is 2 on one axis, 1 information on the other axis. Any combination you will try here, you'll end up the same pattern. Let's say I'm choosing these 3 points. Point 3, point 4 on the one axis, point 2 on the other axis. That will be enough to draw the ellipse. So 2 on one axis, 1 on the other axis. Whatever you do will end up the same pattern. If you use 3 points out of those 4 points, it will end up the same pattern. Now, there are some other things that we can do. We can choose 2 points on one axis, 2 points on one axis, and the distance on the other axis. Remember, 2 points on one axis, distance on the other axis. This is also possible. Look, the idea is we're not going to use center at all. We're just using the information on the axis endpoints and the half axis length. I can also draw ellipse using those 2 points on the main axis, and the distance on the secondary axis. So just let me highlight all of this information. Let me just write them down somewhere. Let's see if I can write all of them here. The possibility that we have I can use point 1, point 2, and point 3. This is one way. I can use 0.1, 0.2, and 0.4. We said we can use 0.3, 0.4, and 0.1, or is it 0.3 with 0.4? It doesn't matter which one comes first. You can say 0.3, 0.4, 0.3, but will end up the same thing. And 0.2. We say we can use different things. I'm gonna come back here in the first part when we're using 0.1, 0.2. We can use 0.1 with 0.2. Look, those two are on the same, will come together, and we'll this time use R2. R2, and instead of the points, we're going to use R2. R2 stands for the distance on the secondary axis. When I'm using 0.3, 0.4, instead of P1 and P2, I can use also, I can use R1. So basically, with the 4 points and the 2 distance you have it, you have around 8 possibility to draw this ellipse if all of the information are given. Remember, we said that from this course you will learn what? Reading information on the drawing. Sometimes I'm drawing something but few information given. I'm expecting from engineer to understand, or at least to be able to read those information. So when you see those information, you know which one is given, and you know that within those combination you can use any of them to draw the ellipse. Any of them can be used to draw the ellipse. Let's look at an example to see how we're using those information to draw the ellipse. Now we have an example. There is mistake in this coordinate. I will update the coordinate. It's supposed to be 22.5 with 5. So look at this ellipse, we have it here. 2 coordinates on one axis, 1 coordinate on the other axis, which will fall one of the categories, 0.1, 0.2 with 0.4. That's enough to draw the ellipse. Now before going to AutoCAD, we have to understand something. In order to do this method, we have to follow a sequence. I mean, always in the axis end method, we need 2 points on one axis, 1 information on the other axis. It means that the axis that you have, the 2 points, always must be input first, then the other information on the other axis. So here I have first point, second point, then I have to provide a third point. Why? Because in this manner AutoCAD will establish an axis between the first 2 points, call it the one axis, then this will be the second axis. Keep this one in mind. You're going to see it now in AutoCAD. What will happen if I don't follow this sequence? Now, let's say I already set up the limits. You have the limits there. Now I'm going to draw the circle, the ellipse here. We're going to start with axis end. Now, do not memorize the step, please. Read the command line and understand it. Remember it. It says specify axis endpoint of ellipse. Axis endpoint, yes. We're going to provide 10, 10. Then we're going to go for 35, 10. Then we'll provide 22.5, 5. Remember, I know it, but you don't need to memorize which one comes first. Reading it might help you. Specify axis endpoint. No need for hashtag, sorry. 10, 10. This is the starting point. Then, if you read the command line, it says specify other endpoint of axis. Other means that you are on the same axis, but you're providing the other point. So if you do a mistake, you realize that, okay, I don't have the other point, you'll press, let's say I started with, let me press escape. Let's say I started with 22.5, 5. Let's say I start with that point. Then AutoCAD is asking me specify other endpoint of axis. Well, I don't have the other endpoint. Yes, I don't have it. I don't have the other endpoint. So I know that I started wrong. I cannot start with that end, the bottom point. Why? Because I don't have the other end point. Press escape, do it again. Axis end, we'll start with 10, 10. Now, do we have the other end point? Yes, we have it, which is 35, 10. We're gonna use hashtag. The direction doesn't matter. You leave it like this, doesn't matter, because we have coordinate. Hashtag 35, 10. Hit enter. Now, it will ask you what? Specify distance to other axis. I mean, this is information on the second axis. What do we have here? We have coordinate. We will provide the coordinate, which is 22.5, 5. So hashtag, doesn't matter the direction, whatever you leave the mouse, wherever you leave it, doesn't matter. This is in coordinate 22.5, 5. Hit enter, you'll have the ellipse. Now look at this ellipse. There is an axis from the first point that we did it to the second point. This is the axis, and then from the center of that one, AutoCAD will provide the axis. This is what we said, that it's important to start 1, 2, and come here. You could start here 1, here 2, will end up the same thing. I mean, instead of, you could start 1, 2, 3, still okay, but main axis first, then the other axis. Or let's say that the axis that you had the two information first, then the other axis. Let's say what will happen if I don't follow this, pattern here. Let's say I'm drawing again. I'm drawing axis end. Let's say I'll start with 10, 10, 10, 10. But this time I'm going to go for 22, hashtag 22.5, 5. So what I choose this one to be the endpoint. Look, if I go for the other point, what I did, I started with this one. I started with 10, 10. I went to 22.5. Let's say I'll go to 35, 35, 10 to see what will happen. Now I have to hashtag 35, 10. Look what we have here. Why? Because AutoCAD drew a line from the first point to the second point as an axis, then perpendicular to this one, it's going to draw the other axis. So you have to be careful when you're choosing those points in axis end. So you're going to start on the axis that you have information, complete information, then you're going to provide the other information on the other axis. Let's say that I don't have this coordinate. Let's say that I don't have this coordinate. Imagine that you don't have this coordinate here. You don't have this coordinate here. Sorry. Let's say you don't have this coordinate here. And instead of that, what do we have? We have a distance. We have a distance. That's also will be fine. Let's say I have this distance here. Sorry, let's say I have this distance. That's also work. Let's say 5. I still have to provide those 2 points. Then I have to provide this distance. It will work fine. Let's do this one as well. So imagine you have 10, 10, 35, 10, and you have 5 as the distance here. Why? Because we said 2 point and distance also work. Let's go to AutoCAD. I'm deleting this one. Going to axis end. Axis end. I'll type 10, 10. Hit enter. Then I'll write hashtag 35, 10. Hit enter. Then when you ask me specify distance to the other axis. Since we're providing distance, make sure you make the direction vertical. Why? Because you're providing distance here. The distance, it's better to, we have to first make it the way that the distance is, so the diamond, the distance I'm providing will be what? In a vertical direction. So I'll make sure the direction of the mouse is in the vertical state. Then I will type 5, hit enter. I will end up the same thing. If I check the coordinates to see if there is any mistake, this is 1010, this is 3510, this is also will be 22.55. Why? Because if I use distance or the coordinate, I will end up the same place, because I chose the distance to be 5 because I knew exactly we'll end up the same coordinate. If you check the distance, I mean from here till center, it is 5, it is 5. If I check from the distance from this point till here, it's supposed to be 25, because between 10 to 35 will be 25. This is how we're using axis and ellipse. Axis and ellipse. We'll provide some exercises with combination of circle, lines, rectangle, so they can practice also ellipse with the others. In the next video, we'll be talking about polygons to see how we'll draw these shapes. Thanks for watching.